The two rivers, once mighty, were now shadows of their former selves. The Tigris and the Euphrates, givers of life, were dwindling. Where they once flowed with power, carrying silt and promise, there were now cracked riverbeds. Dust devils danced where fish had once swam. The land of Sumer, nestled between these rivers, was parched. The sun beat down mercilessly. It baked the earth until it cracked. The once fertile fields lay barren. Crops withered and died. The heart of Sumer was drying up. The people were desperate. Their livelihood, their very survival depended on the rivers. What would they eat? How would they live? Fear, like the dust in the wind, began to settle over everything. In the village of Eridu, whispers of despair replaced songs of harvest. Mothers held their hungry children close. Fathers stared at the empty sky, hoping for a sign, for rain. The elders of the village gathered. Their faces, etched with worry lines, reflected the severity of the situation. They spoke in hushed tones, their voices heavy with concern.
The gods have abandoned us.
One elder lamented, his voice shaking.
Our prayers go unanswered.
A wave of agreement rippled through the gathering. Doubt and fear had taken root. Their gods, once sources of comfort and hope, now seemed distant.
We must appease them. We must offer sacrifices, more valuable than ever before.
But even as he spoke, the doubt lingered. What if their sacrifices weren't enough? What if the gods remained unmoved? Lugal, a young farmer, listened to the elders, his heart heavy. He watched his crops wither, his family grow weaker. He refused to give in to despair. There had to be a way. Lugal had heard tales whispered by the firelight, stories of Enki, the god of wisdom and water. He was said to reside in the depths of Abzu, the primordial waters.
Enki, the stories claimed, was a god who listened, a god who helped those who sought his wisdom.
Lugal clung to this hope. He knew what he had to do. He would journey to the sacred city of Eridu. He would find the temple of Enki, and he would plead for his people, for his land. The sun rose, painting the sky in hues of desperation. Lugal stood at the edge of his village. He looked back at his family. His wife, Iana, stood stoic, her hand resting on their son's shoulder. Her eyes held a mixture of fear and hope. Lugal offered them a reassuring smile, though his heart felt heavy. He knew the journey ahead would be perilous. He had heard tales of scorching deserts and bandit-infested paths.
But I'm determined.
Lugal carried the weight of his village, the hopes of his people, on his shoulders. He clutched the staff in his hand, a symbol of his resolve. He adjusted the weight of the waterskin on his back. Every drop would be precious. With a deep breath, Lugal turned and faced the rising sun. He began to walk, each step taking him further from home, closer to the unknown. Days bled into nights. The sun beat down mercilessly. Lugal traversed barren landscapes, his skin tanned and cracked by the unrelenting heat. The wind, a constant companion, whipped around him, carrying whispers of doubt. His throat was parched, his lips cracked. The waterskin, once full of promise, now held only a few precious drops. He rationed them carefully, each sip a reminder of his dwindling resources.
Each step, a struggle. Each breath, a challenge. But I must go on, for my people, for my land.
He encountered dangers along the way. Venomous snakes slithered through the undergrowth. Vultures circled overhead, their shadows a constant reminder of mortality. Once he was ambushed by bandits, their eyes gleaming with greed, but Lugal fought them off, his staff becoming an extension of his will. He emerged victorious, bruised and battered, but unbroken. His resolve, fueled by the plight of his people, remained unshaken.
I will not falter, I will not fail. My people need me.
After what felt like an eternity, Lugal saw it, a shimmer on the horizon, a beacon of hope amidst the desolation. As he drew closer, the shimmer resolved itself into the majestic outline of Eridu. The sacred city, nestled at the edge of the ancient waters of Abzu, was a sight to behold. Towers of white stone rose towards the heavens, catching the rays of the setting sun. Palm trees swayed gently, their fronds whispering promises of life. Exhaustion momentarily forgotten, Lugal picked up his pace. He walked through the city gates, his heart pounding with anticipation. People bustled about, their faces etched with worry, but the air felt lighter here. Hope, it seemed, still lingered in this sacred place. Lugal made his way towards the heart of the city, towards the towering structure that dominated the skyline, the Temple of Enki, his destination, his only hope. S1, Media, ancient Eridu city, gates, entrance, Eridu. I've made it finally a place of hope.
The Temple of Enki. It holds the answers I seek.
The Temple of Enki loomed before Lugal. It was a testament to the god's power. Intricate carvings adorned the walls. They depicted scenes of creation, of water giving life to the land. Lugal felt a sense of awe wash over him. He stepped inside, his footsteps echoing on the cool stone floor. Incense burned in braziers, the air was thick with the scent of cedarwood and myrrh.
This place, it's magnificent. The stories were true.
He found the high priest. The priest stood near a pool of shimmering water. The pool, fed by an underground spring, was said to be a direct conduit to Abzu. The high priest, his face lined with age and wisdom, looked at Lugal. His eyes held a depth of knowledge that Lugal had only glimpsed in his dreams. Lugal approached him, his heart pounding in his chest. He knelt before the priest, his head bowed in reverence.
Welcome, traveler. You have journeyed far. What is it that you seek?
Great priest, I seek the wisdom of Enki. My land is dying and my people suffer. I need your guidance.
Rise, Lugal, the path you have taken is but the beginning. The answers you seek lie within. Let us begin.
And so Lugal's quest for wisdom truly began under the watchful eyes of the high priest and the benevolent gaze of Enki.
Great priest, I have traveled far. I seek the wisdom of Enki.
He told the priest of the plight of his village. He spoke of the parched land, the dying crops, the despair of his people. The priest listened patiently, his gaze never leaving Lugal's face. When Lugal was finished, the priest nodded slowly. He placed a hand on Lugal's shoulder.
Enki is a god of wisdom and mercy. He will hear your plea, but you must be worthy to receive his guidance.
The priest led Lugal to the edge of the pool. The water shimmered, reflecting the flickering light of the braziers. It seemed to pulse with an unseen energy.
Immerse yourself, open your heart to Enki, and he will answer.
Lugal hesitated for a moment, a tremor of fear running through him. He took a deep breath and stepped into the pool. The water was cold. It sent a jolt through his body. He gasped, but the coldness quickly gave way to a strange sensation. He felt light, buoyant, as if he were floating in the sky. He closed his eyes and he sank beneath the surface. Darkness enveloped him, but it wasn't a frightening darkness. It was a comforting darkness, a darkness filled with the promise of knowledge. Then a voice echoed through the water, through his very being. It was a voice, ancient and powerful, filled with an ageless wisdom.
You have called upon me, Lugal of Eridu?
Lugal's heart pounded in his chest. He knew with every fiber of his being that he was in the presence of a god. Lugal emerged from the sacred pool, blinking against the light. He felt changed, transformed. The wisdom of Enki flowed through him, as vital and invigorating as the waters of Abzu. He carried the weight of knowledge, but it did not burden him, it empowered him. He knew what he had to do. The high priest watched him, a knowing smile on his aged face.
Go, share Enki's wisdom, heal your land, unite your people.
Lugal bowed his head in gratitude. He left the temple, his steps lighter than they had been on his arrival. He journeyed back to his village, his heart filled with hope. The journey seemed shorter this time, the desert less harsh. Lugal gathered the villagers. They assembled in the village square, their faces etched with the same worry and despair that he had carried with him to Eridu. He stood before them, his staff planted firmly in the ground, a symbol of his resolve.
I have spoken with Enki.
The villagers gasped. A hush fell over the crowd. This was no time for false hope. Lugal told them of his journey, of his encounter with the god of wisdom. He spoke of the knowledge that Enki had bestowed upon him. He described the canals they would dig, the reservoirs they would build.
By working together, we can harness the power of the rivers, bringing life back to our land.
At first, they listened with skepticism. They had heard promises before, only to be met with disappointment, but there was something different about Lugal now. He spoke with conviction, with the authority of a man touched by the divine. Not everyone was convinced. There were whispers of doubt, murmurs of dissent.
These are the ramblings of a madman. We have always lived and died by the will of the gods. What good are canals and reservoirs against their wrath?
Lugal understood their fear. He had felt it himself, but he also knew that Enki's wisdom offered them a chance, a way to take control of their destiny.
Enki has not abandoned us. He has shown us a way. He has given us the knowledge to heal our land. But we must have faith. We must work together.
Lugal's words, imbued with Enki's wisdom, hung in the air. The villagers of Eridu listened, some with a flicker of hope in their eyes. Others remained unconvinced, their faces etched with the weariness of seasons of hardship. To them, Lugal's plan seemed like a whisper against a storm, a futile attempt to defy the will of the gods. The weight of their doubt pressed down upon Lugal's spirit. He had returned from the sacred city, brimming with the promise of renewal, but the skepticism he encountered felt like a bucket of cold water thrown onto a fledgling fire.
It's madness. We cannot simply redirect the rivers as we please. The gods control the waters, not us.
His words resonated with a chorus of agreement from a group of villagers. They huddled together, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty.
What if we anger the gods with our meddling? What if this plan brings us more misfortune?
The weight of doubt was heavy, but Lugal knew that faith and unity could turn the tide. His words seemed to hang in the air for a moment, then, slowly, a hand rose from the crowd. A weathered hand, calloused from seasons of toil, but strong nonetheless. It was a farmer named Enlil, a man respected for his quiet strength and unwavering loyalty. He looked at Lugal, his eyes filled with a hesitant hope. Lugal looked out at the faces of his people, his heart heavy with the weight of their doubt. He understood their fear, their reluctance to embrace a path that seemed so uncertain, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that this was their only chance. Enki's wisdom burned within him, a beacon of hope in the face of despair. He stepped forward, his hand outstretched towards the villagers. I know you are afraid. I have felt that same fear, but we cannot simply sit here and wait for the gods to take pity on us. We must act. We must fight for our survival.
I will help. If Enki has shown you a way, then we must try.
A ripple of hope coursed through the crowd. One by one, other villagers stepped forward, their faces reflecting a growing determination. They were farmers, artisans, mothers and fathers, all united by a shared desire to save their village. Lugal felt a surge of gratitude wash over him. He wasn't alone in this. As more villagers pledged their support, a dark figure emerged from the periphery of the crowd. Gibble, a rival farmer known for his jealousy and ambition, sneered at Lugal.
Fools! You follow this dreamer blindly into ruin. The gods will punish you for your arrogance.
Gibble's words, laced with venom, cast a pall over the gathering. Lugal met Gibble's gaze, his expression unyielding. He had anticipated resistance, but something about Gibble's animosity ran deeper, fueled by a bitterness that Lugal couldn't quite place. Ignoring Gibble's taunts, Lugal turned back to the villagers who had pledged their support.
We will begin at dawn. We will rebuild our lives together.
As the villagers dispersed, energized by a spark of hope, Lugal couldn't shake the feeling that Gibble's shadow loomed over their newfound unity. Whispers of sabotage and dissent seemed to cling to the air, like thorns hidden amongst the petals of a blooming flower. Gibble watched Lugal from the shadows, his heart a knot of resentment. He saw the villagers rally around Lugal, their faces lit with a hope that Gibble no longer felt. He felt a bitter taste in his mouth, the taste of envy and something darker, something he couldn't quite name. It twisted in his gut, urging him to act, to tear down Lugal's newfound authority. He couldn't stand to see Lugal succeed, not while he himself remained mired in the same despair that had gripped the village for so long.
He's leading them astray, Gibble muttered to himself, his voice a venomous hiss. Those canals, those reservoirs, they're an insult to the gods. They'll bring ruin upon us all. He paced back and forth, his mind racing. He had to do something to expose Lugal's folly, to show the villagers the error of their ways. He had to make them see that their only hope lay in appeasing the gods, not in defying them.
Gibil began to sow seeds of doubt amongst the villagers. He approached them individually, whispering his poison into their ears. He preyed on their fears, their uncertainties, their deep-seated belief that they were powerless against the whims of the gods.
"Have you seen how low the river flows?" he'd whisper, his voice laced with concern. "Lugal's canals will drain what little water we have left. He's dooming us all." To others, he'd hint at Lugal's ambition, suggesting that he was using the crisis to seize power for himself. "He claims to speak for Enki," Gibil would say, his voice dripping with insinuation. "But who's to say he's not twisting the god's words to his advantage?"
Slowly, insidiously, Gibil's words began to take root. Under the cloak of darkness, Gibil made his move. He snuck out to the site where the villagers had been working tirelessly on a new levee, a crucial part of Lugal's irrigation plan. He carried with him a heavy wooden beam, his heart pounding in his chest, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through him.
He found the section of the levee that was still under construction, the freshly packed earth vulnerable to his sabotage. He hesitated for a moment, a flicker of doubt momentarily clouding his resolve. But the thought of Lugal's success, the image of the villagers praising his name, fueled his anger, pushing him forward. He slammed the beam against the levee again and again, each thud a blow against Lugal, against the fragile hope that had taken root in the village.
The night was silent, save for the croaking of frogs and the distant howl of a jackal. Unbeknownst to the sleeping villagers, Gibil's sabotage had set in motion a chain of events that would test their newfound unity. The weakened levee, unable to withstand the pressure of the rising river, gave way. Water surged through the breach, a torrent of destruction that swept through fields and homes, carrying away their hopes and dreams. The roar of the water woke the village.
Panic ensued as people stumbled out of their homes, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of torches, their cries swallowed by the sounds of chaos and destruction.
Lugal, alerted by the commotion, raced towards the source of the flood. His heart sank as he saw the broken levee, the water raging through the gap.
He knew instantly what had happened.
Gibil, his face pale with a mixture of fear and guilt, stood at the edge of the crowd, his eyes wide with the realization of what he had done. The villagers, their faces a mixture of despair and anger, turned towards Gibil, their accusations a torrent as fierce as the floodwaters that raged around them.
"Now is not the time for blame," he said, his gaze steady. "Now is the time to rebuild."
The waters receded. They left behind a trail of devastation. The flood, born from Gibil's act of sabotage, had tested the spirit of Eridu, yet it had not broken them. Lugal, his resolve strengthened by the crisis, rallied the villagers. They worked tirelessly. They repaired the levee, they cleared debris, they began the arduous task of replanting their fields.
But a new threat loomed. The sun, once a source of life, now beat down with a relentless fury. Days turned into weeks, and the rains that usually replenished the land failed to arrive. The earth, already scarred by the flood, began to crack and bake under the relentless heat. The crops so recently replanted withered and died.
Fear, like a serpent, coiled around the hearts of the villagers. They looked to the sky, their eyes searching for a sign, a cloud, a promise of rain. But there was only the endless blue mocking their hopes. Whispers of doubt began to surface. Some murmured that Enki had abandoned them. Others suggested that he was punishing them for their arrogance.
Gibil, his guilt and shame a heavy burden, watched the village teeter on the brink of despair. He had hoped to undermine Lugal, to expose him as a false prophet, but in his blindness, he had only brought more suffering upon them all. He had tested the patience of the gods, and they had answered with their wrath.
Lugal felt the weight of their despair pressing down upon him. He understood their fear, their temptation to return to the old ways, to appease the gods with sacrifices and pleas. But he also remembered Enki's words, the wisdom that flowed through him like the waters of Abzu.
"Balance," Enki had said. "Respect the natural order."
Lugal realized that their recent trials were not a punishment, but a test. Enki was testing their resolve, their understanding of his teachings.
"We face a new challenge, but we will not despair. Enki has not abandoned us. He has given us the knowledge to overcome this."
He reminded them of Enki's teachings, not just about canals and reservoirs, but about the delicate balance of nature, the need to adapt to changing circumstances. He proposed a new plan, one that focused on water conservation, on using their limited resources wisely. He spoke of digging deeper wells, of developing drought-resistant crops, of sharing their dwindling supplies fairly. His words, imbued with Enki's wisdom and his own hard-won experience, resonated with the villagers.
They had faced hardship before, they had learned from their mistakes, and they had found strength in unity.
Years passed. The seasons turned. Eridu, under Lugal's guidance, flourished. The canals, once a testament to their desperation, now hummed with life-giving water. They snaked through the land, carrying the promise of abundance. The fields, once barren and cracked, now burst forth with an abundance of crops. Dates, figs, and pomegranates weighed down the branches of once barren trees. Sheep and goats grazed on lush pastures, their bleating a symphony of contentment.
The marketplaces, once deserted, now thronged with people. Merchants hawked their wares, their voices a vibrant chorus of commerce. The air, once thick with the dust of despair, now carried the sweet scent of ripening fruit and freshly baked bread. Laughter, a sound that had been absent for too long, echoed through the streets. Katie.
Eridu, once on the brink of ruin, now stood as a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring power of wisdom and unity. Lugal, his hair now streaked with grey, watched the city thrive, a sense of profound satisfaction warming his heart. He had led his people through the darkest of times. He had shown them the path to resilience. He had proven that even in the face of adversity, hope could bloom. He often found himself standing by the river, his gaze lost in the flowing water.
He would remember Enki's words, the wisdom that had guided him, that had saved his people. He understood now that Enki's test had not been a punishment, but a crucible. It had forged them into a stronger, more resilient people. They had learned to respect the delicate balance of nature. They had discovered the power of unity, the strength that came from working together towards a common goal.
As Lugal watched the children play by the riverbank, their laughter echoing through the air, he knew that his work was done. He had passed on Enki's wisdom to a new generation. He had shown them that they were not at the mercy of fate, that they had the power to shape their own destiny.
He had ensured that the legacy of Enki, the god of wisdom and water, would continue to flow through the heart of Eridu, nourishing their spirits, sustaining their lives for generations to come.
The tale of Lugal, the farmer who sought the wisdom of Enki, became a cherished legend, whispered by parents to their children, a reminder of their ancestors' resilience, their enduring bond with the divine, and the enduring power of hope.